Golden rays spilled through the half-open blinds, painting the hotel room in a warm, deceitful glow. My hands clenched the steering wheel as I watched the entrance from my parked car. A sleek black sedan pulled up, tires kissing the pavement with practiced ease. The valet barely had time to open the door before she stepped out, heels clicking, hips swaying, her floral dress whispering against her toned legs. My wife. Kara's face held a glow I hadn't seen in years. Not with me, at least. Excitement radiated off her in waves, her lips curved in an anticipatory smirk. That smile used to be mine. Now it belonged to him. He followed close behind. Marcus Davenport, my boss. A man whose handshake once felt like a promise, but now burned like betrayal. His palms settled on the small of her back as they strode inside, their intimacy blatant. My pulse pounded, each beat a hammer striking my ribcage. I could have stormed in, caused a scene, demanded answers. But that wasn't my plan. No, they had no idea I was here, lurking in the shadows, waiting. The hotel lobby bustled with travelers, business people, and staff moving with orchestrated precision. None of them knew that two of their guests had left destruction in their wake. I stepped out of the car, moving with measured purpose. The crisp air did nothing to cool the fire in my chest. A deep inhale steadied me before I entered through the revolving doors. The receptionist barely spared me a glance as she handed Marcus a key card. He palmed it with a smirk, fingers grazing Kara's as he passed it to her. My gut twisted at the sight of her flushed cheeks. She was breathless, eyes flickering with desire. Marcus leaned down, whispering something in her ear that made her bite her lower lip. The gesture was seared into my brain, a cruel brand of infidelity. They walked toward the elevators, fingers brushing but not fully interlocking. A secret dance. I moved swiftly, ducking behind a marble pillar. Watching, calculating. A bell chimed, signaling the arrival of their ride to sin. They stepped inside, doors sliding shut with a finality that sent an ache rippling through my chest. I turned on my heel, heading toward the stairwell. I wouldn't be far behind. The climb was agonizingly slow, each step fueled by a toxic blend of fury and determination. My breath came in measured exhales as I reached the floor, just in time to see them disappear behind a door. Room 1426. I approached, footsteps muffled by plush carpeting. Pressing my ear against the wood, I caught fragments, laughter, a low murmur, the rustling of clothing. Fingers trembled as I retrieved my own keycard, not the one they had, but a different one entirely. Slipping inside the neighboring room, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My heartbeat was a wild drum, anticipation thrumming through my veins. I crossed to the adjoining door, the one I had arranged to be unlocked in advance. The hotel manager owed me a favor, and tonight, that debt was paid in full. My fingers curled around the handle, twisting it silently. Beyond that barrier, my wife lay in another man's arms, and she had no idea I was waiting. A hushed moan slipped through the crack of the adjoining door, threading through my ears like barbed wire. My grip tightened around the handle, but I didn't push forward. Not yet. Timing was everything. I needed them lost in each other, tangled in lust, blind to the storm creeping closer. Another breathy giggle followed, Kara's voice rich with forbidden pleasure. My stomach twisted into knots, bile creeping up my throat, but I swallowed it down. Inside that room, she was his. I forced myself to wait. Each second scraped against my sanity, testing the limits of my control. The sounds grew bolder, soft gasps, the rustling of sheets, the muffled weight of bodies pressing into the mattress. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. Then I moved. Slowly, deliberately, I turned the handle, easing the door open just a crack. The sight punched the air from my lungs. Kara lay sprawled on the bed, golden hair fanned out against hotel pillows, her bare skin bathed in dim lamplight. Marcus hovered over her, lips tracing a path down her throat, his hands wandering without restraint. Their whispers were drowned by the roaring in my head. I could have stopped them right then, shattered their world in an instant. But that wasn't enough. They needed to fall apart the way I had, slowly, painfully, realizing too late that everything was crumbling. With measured precision, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Frame by frame, I captured my wife's betrayal, the arch of her back, the greedy way she clung to him, the heat in her gaze as she welcomed his touch, the same way she used to look at me. A dark satisfaction curled in my chest. Let her laugh now. Let her think she had fooled me. She had no idea what waited on the other side of this moment. I stepped back, leaving the door cracked just enough to hear every breathless plea, every whispered moan. My own pulse hammered violently, rage curling through my veins like smoke. Minutes passed, agonizing, endless minutes, before their gasps turned into contented sighs. Sheets rustled as bodies shifted, limbs untangling. It was time. Sliding my phone back into my pocket, I adjusted my expression, smoothing away every trace of the storm brewing inside me. Then I stepped through the doorway. Kara's laughter froze midair. Her gaze snapped to mine, pupils dilating in a mixture of shock and horror. Marcus bolted upright, scrambling to cover himself, but it was too late. Far, far too late. She couldn't even breathe. I let the silence stretch, let her choke on the weight of her own guilt. Then I smiled. Didn't expect me, did you? Kara's breath hitched, her bare shoulders trembling as she clutched the crumpled sheets to her chest. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking ghostly beneath the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She wasn't laughing now. Marcus, on the other hand, reacted like a cornered animal. He lunged for his discarded clothes, yanking on his pants with fumbling hands. His confidence, the smug charm he carried in the office, evaporated in an instant. I took a slow step forward, savoring the moment. Kara still hadn't moved. Her fingers were tight around the fabric, knuckles white, as if the sheets could shield her from what was coming. "Say something," I murmured, voice calm, controlled, a stark contrast to the chaos burning behind my ribs. She inhaled sharply, chest rising and falling with frantic energy. Nothing followed. Marcus finally found his voice. "Listen, man, I turned my gaze to him, and whatever excuse he had prepared died in his throat. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. He wasn't used to being on the losing side of anything. I let the silence stretch, absorbing the tension wrapping around the room. They had reveled in secrecy, thrived in the thrill of sneaking around. Now, stripped bare under my scrutiny, they were nothing more than cowards caught in their own web. Kara's lower lip trembled. "How long have you—" "Long enough," I interrupted. "Long enough to know this wasn't a mistake. Long enough to know you didn't just fall into his bed." I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Tell me, Kara, was it worth it?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness. The love I once had for her had been gutted, hollowed out, leaving only cold, calculated intent. Marcus took a cautious step forward, hands raised. Let's talk about this, all right? No need to make a scene." I chuckled. The audacity of the man. "A scene?" My voice darkened. "You're worried about a scene?" Kara flinched. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, unlocking the screen with a few swift movements. Turning it toward them, I pressed play. The room filled with the sound of their betrayal. Kara gasped, slapping a hand over her mouth as she listened to herself moan, beg, whisper Marcus's name with desperate longing. Her eyes darted between me and the screen, horror twisting her features. Marcus cursed under his breath, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You Recorded everything, I finished for him, raising an eyebrow. Of course, I wanted proof, something undeniable, something I can use however I see fit. Kara shook her head violently, tears spilling over. Please, no, you don't have to do this. Don't I? My tone remained even. You had choices, Kara. Every single time you met him, every time you kissed him, let him touch you. You made a choice. I paused, letting the words sink in. Now it's my turn. Marcus clenched his jaw, finally regaining some of his composure. What do you want? I studied him, the way he squared his shoulders, the way his breathing steadied. He thought he could negotiate his way out of this. He thought money, power, influence, whatever he had used to win Kara over, could fix this. He had no idea. I smiled, slow and deliberate. You'll see soon enough. Turning on my heel, I strode toward the door. The weight of their panic followed me, thick in the air. I didn't have to look back to know Kara had collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into her hands. Good. She had destroyed everything I believed in. Now it was my turn to return the favor. Morning light slanted through the hotel room's sheer curtains, casting pale streaks over the wreckage of my wife's betrayal. Behind me, Kara sobbed into the sheets, broken gasps choking her. Marcus stood frozen, fists clenched, lips pressing into a grim line. He wanted to salvage control, but he had none left. I owned this moment. I owned them. I turned to face them, watching as Kara's tear-streaked face lifted. Desperation gleamed in her wide eyes. Please, she whispered, voice raw, trembling. Don't do this. We can fix this. I let out a low laugh. Fix this? The very idea was insulting. She tried again, scrambling to the edge of the bed, reaching for me. I made a mistake. No, I cut in, stepping just out of reach. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is misplacing car keys. My expression hardened. You, Kara, made a decision. Her breath hitched. I still love you. I tilted my head, studying her like a puzzle with missing pieces. Number, you love what I gave you. Security, comfort, stability. My gaze flicked to Marcus. And when that wasn't enough, you found a thrill elsewhere. Marcus stiffened, taking a cautious step forward. Let's be rational here. I silenced him with a sharp glare. Don't speak. To my satisfaction, he obeyed. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then I reached into my pocket and withdrew a small envelope. Kara's eyes flickered with confusion, but Marcus? His entire body went rigid. I tossed it onto the bed. The thick, glossy photos spilled out. Kara hesitated, then shakily picked up the first one. The blood drained from her face. It wasn't just evidence of her affair. It was evidence of Marcus's, with more than just her. Kara flipped through them, hands shaking violently. Different women, different nights, a pattern of deceit stretching far beyond her. She turned to Marcus, voice barely above a whisper. You told me I was the only one. Marcus's face darkened, jaw tightening. This isn't what it looks like. I smiled, amused by the irony. Kara let out a broken, humorless laugh, her sorrow morphing into something else. You, she cut off, eyes blazing. You were playing me. Marcus reached for her, but she recoiled, dropping the photos like they burned. I leaned against the doorframe, watching as the trust between them disintegrated, exactly as I had planned. This whole time, Kara whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. I thought we had something real. Marcus opened his mouth, but I spoke first. You were just one of many, Kara, just like I was. I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. And now I don't belong to you anymore. Her breath hitched. I turned to leave, but before stepping out, I glanced over my shoulder. Oh, and Marcus? His gaze snapped to mine, wary. I smirked. Enjoy explaining those photos to your wife. The color drained from his face. With that, I walked out, leaving them to drown in the ruin of their own making. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the destruction left behind. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.